Blue River Sinkhole Fake Guide Tragedy. In 2003, a group of 6 recreational divers hired a man named Carlos to guide them through a flooded sinkhole cave system in Central America. Carlos advertised himself online as a certified cave diving instructor with 10 years of experience. He posted photos of himself inside underwater caves, wearing professional equipment and flashing a confident smile. His website had dozens of 5-star reviews from satisfied customers. The 6 divers, 4 Americans and 2 Canadians, had booked the trip months in advance. None of them had cave diving certification. They were open water divers looking for an adventure. Carlos told them not to worry. He said he would handle everything. On the morning of the dive, Carlos met the group at the edge of a deep blue sinkhole surrounded by jungle. The water was crystal clear and dropped straight down into a massive underwater chamber. From there, tunnels branched off in every direction into the limestone. Carlos gave the group a short safety briefing and told them to follow him and stay close. He attached a single reel of line to a rock near the surface and began swimming into the cave. The group followed him one by one into the darkness. For the first 10 minutes, everything was beautiful. Sunlight filtered down from the sinkhole above and the water was warm and still. Then Carlos led them deeper, past the point where daylight could reach. The tunnel narrowed, the ceiling dropped lower. One of the divers kicked the fine silt on the cave floor, and within seconds, a thick brown cloud exploded into the water. Visibility dropped to 0. Nobody could see anything. Not their hands, not their buddy, not the guideline. In the panic, 2 divers lost the line completely. Carlos tried to turn the group around, but in the silt out, he made a critical mistake. He led them down the wrong tunnel, and instead of heading back toward the sinkhole, they swam deeper into the cave system. By the time Carlos realized his error, 2 of the divers were already dangerously low on air. One of them signaled frantically that her tank was nearly empty. Carlos had no spare tanks. He had no emergency breathing equipment. He did not even have a proper cave diving reel, just a cheap spool of line from a hardware store. The 2 low-on-air divers never made it out. Their bodies were found the next day, 200 meters inside the cave, still holding each other's hands. The other 4 divers and Carlos barely escaped, surfacing with almost no air left in their tanks. When investigators examined Carlos's credentials, they discovered the truth. He had never been certified as a cave diving instructor. He had a basic open water instructor card, nothing more. His website reviews were fake. His photos were taken in the cavern zone, not inside real caves. He had been running illegal cave tours for over a year and nobody had checked. Carlos was charged with negligent homicide. 2 families buried their loved ones because one man decided his lies were worth more than their lives. Florida Spring Cave Fake Certification Deaths. A 42-year-old dive instructor named Cliff had a secret. He was certified to teach scuba diving in open water, pools, lakes, and shallow reefs. But he was not certified to dive in caves. Cave diving requires completely different training, different equipment, and different rules. Cliff did not care. He had entered underwater caves many times before without the proper certification, and nothing bad had ever happened. His dive buddy was a 52-year-old man named Andrew. Andrew was an experienced open water diver with several specialty ratings, but he had never been inside an underwater cave in his life. One day, the 2 friends drove to a popular freshwater spring in Florida that had an underwater cave system attached to it. The spring had strict rules. If you did not have cave diving certification, you were not allowed inside the cave. You were not even allowed to bring a dive light with you. When Cliff and Andrew arrived, they watched teams of certified cave divers gear up and enter the system. Then Cliff and Andrew signed forms promising they would only dive in the open water areas. They lied. They had hidden lights in their gear bags. They planned to enter the cave the whole time. Because Cliff was a well-known instructor at the facility, nobody checked their equipment. Nobody questioned them. When they got in the water, Cliff led Andrew toward the open training areas as if they were going for a normal dive. When he was sure nobody was watching, Cliff turned and swam straight into the cave entrance. Andrew followed him into the darkness. They did not tie a safety line at the entrance. They did not follow any of the basic rules that keep cave divers alive. Nobody knows exactly what happened next. Neither man made it out alive to explain. At the end of the day, staff noticed that Cliff and Andrew's gear bags were still sitting on the grass where they had left them. Nobody had seen the 2 men in hours. Staff searched the open water and asked every diver on site if they had seen them. Nobody had. The next day, a recovery team found both bodies 120 feet inside the cave. They were in a small side tunnel off the main system. Andrew's tanks were empty. He had run out of air and drowned. Cliff was wearing double tanks, and when rescuers checked his gear, they found something that made their hearts sink. The valve connecting his two tanks was closed. One tank was completely empty, but the other was still full. All Cliff had to do was open the valve or switch to his other regulator. He would have had plenty of air to swim out. But in the panic and the darkness, he never did it. Cliff had taught Andrew to trust him. Andrew had followed his instructor into a place where neither of them belonged. And because Cliff lied about his qualifications, both men died 120 feet from daylight. Vortex Spring Cave Disappearance. In the summer of 2010, a 30-year-old man named Ben McDaniel began diving at a place called Vortex Spring in the Florida Panhandle. Vortex Spring was a popular diving spot with warm, clear water fed by an underground spring. But hidden beneath the surface was a dangerous underwater cave system that stretched for hundreds of meters through solid limestone. 13 divers had already died in that cave during the 1990s. After those deaths, the owners installed a locked metal gate at the cave entrance, 115 feet below the surface. The gate had a sign showing the Grim Reaper, warning divers to turn back. Only divers with full cave diving certification could get the key. Ben did not have cave diving certification. He had never completed the required 2 months of specialized training. He had never done the 125 supervised dives with an instructor that the certification demanded. But Ben told people he was working on getting certified. He told his parents he was researching cave diving and planned to become an instructor. He acted like he knew what he was doing. He had the right equipment. Double tanks, a buoyancy wing, canister lights. He looked professional. The staff at Vortex Spring came to recognize him as a regular. One employee later said that while Ben had the gear and the knowledge, he was often too confident in his own abilities. Ben had been going through a difficult time in his life. He had gone through a divorce. His business had failed. His younger brother had died 2 years earlier, and he was living in his parents' beach house trying to start over. On August 18, 2010, Ben went to Vortex Spring and made a dive during the day. Other divers noticed him looking closely at the area around the cave entrance, as if he was studying it. That evening, 2 employees saw Ben enter the water for another dive. He never came back up. When staff realized Ben was missing, they called in rescue divers. Search teams entered the cave and searched for days. They found some of his equipment, decompression tanks placed at odd spots inside the cave. But they never found his body. Many of the divers who searched the cave said Ben was simply too large to fit through the narrowest passages deeper inside the system. If his body was in there, it was in a place no human could reach. In 2013, the state of Florida declared Ben McDaniel legally dead. His parents still believe his body is somewhere inside the cave, in a section too narrow and too deep for anyone to find. A reward the family offered was pulled after another diver died, possibly trying to collect it. Ben McDaniel never had the certification to enter that cave. But he convinced himself, everyone around him, that he was good enough to go in without it. Vortex Spring kept his body and his secret. Calavera, Cenote unqualified guide deaths. In the summer of 1995, a husband and wife named Harry and Maria ran a dive shop on the island of Cozumel, Mexico. Tourists kept asking them for guided tours of the cenotes, the famous flooded caves on the Yucatan Peninsula. The cenotes were some of the most beautiful underwater caves in the world. Crystal clear water, ancient limestone walls, and tunnels that stretched for kilometers through the jungle. But cenote diving is cave diving. It is one of the most dangerous forms of diving on Earth. Harry and Maria were certified open water divers. They had no cave diving training at all. They needed a guide, someone who could lead tourists safely through the underwater caves. They found a man named Juan. Juan was an open water instructor. He was not a cave diving instructor, and he did not have cave diving certification, but he told Harry and Maria he could handle the job. On August 17, 1995, the group met at a cenote near the town of Tulum. There were 8 divers in total. Harry, Maria, Juan, 3 Dutch tourists, an Italian, and an American woman. None of them were certified cave divers, not one. They strapped on their equipment and dropped into the warm, turquoise water. The cenote was shallow and beautiful, and for the first few minutes, everything felt like paradise. The group trusted Juan completely. He was their dive master, the man in charge of their safety. But Juan led them past the cavern zone and into the real cave system. The passages began to narrow. The ceiling closed in above them. Daylight disappeared behind them. At some point, the group got separated. In the confusion, several divers lost the guideline, the rope that shows the way out. Without it, the tunnels all looked the same. An endless maze of rock and water with no exit in sight. Panic set in. 3 of the 8 divers never made it back to the surface. Harry, Maria, and 1 other diver drowned inside the cenote. Their bodies were found deep in the cave system, far from the main line. The 5 survivors made it out alive, shaken and traumatized. The investigation revealed the truth. Juan had no business leading anyone into a cave. He was not qualified. He did not have the training, the certification, or the experience to guide tourists through an overhead environment. But he took the job anyway, and because he lied about what he could do, 3 people followed him into the darkness and never came home.